Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin with the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic. You know, it's amazing how much work you can get done when Facebook crashes. Yeah.
What's Facebook again? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that seems to be the big news as we're recording is Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, all of their related apps have just had a major outage. So
Oh,
people are getting things done and going outside instead of scrolling through their feeds.
wow. And of course, today if we're going outside, we're going out in the rain, but we're going to make our own sunshine here. And it's just so cool because our guest today is an old time friend of mine, even though she's very, very, very young, and that I met a long time ago through networking. And she's got a fabulous story. So, I mean, I'm so excited that everybody's about to meet Ashley.
Yay.
And on that note, Ashley, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Ashley Pereira. I live in North Windham, Connecticut. I've lived here for almost all of my life. As a kid, I always loved animals and I thought I would become a veterinarian. So I got my degree in animal science from UConn. And in doing so, realized that I did not want to become a vet. When I saw what it was all about, just realized it wasn't for me. So my next step was to become a teacher. So I got my master's degree from Eastern Connecticut State University, and I was a middle and high school science teacher for a little while. And in doing that, I realized what my true calling in life is, what my true passion is, which is STEM career exploration. So, STEM being science, technology, engineering, and math. And essentially, what I do now, my company is careerinstem.com. And I essentially took everything that I created as a teacher to help my teenagers become interested in STEM, realize what STEM was, and help them start discovering STEM careers. I put everything that I created as a teacher and I've turned it into a system, which I now have helping over 3 million students. We just hit the 3 million student mark a couple weeks ago. So that's me in a nutshell of what I've done and what I'm trying to get done.
That's
No,
fantastic.
it's just amazing because I followed you for this whole ride, as far as putting this whole thing together, and it's amazing what you've done with this whole program and outreach. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your website and how it works and how you're targeting not only the students but helping teachers do the courses and so on and so forth.
Yeah, yep. So I have two sides of the coin, I guess. First side is everything I wrote in terms of lessons and games and resources, posters I made. I have a store, so I just sell things that I made. And then I also have what's called the Career and STEM Explorer System. So it's an online platform where students can come, and my mission is that any teenager can come to the Explorer and use it to find an interesting STEM career in 9 seconds or less, guaranteed. So it's just a very simple, easy, user friendly platform that kids can come to click around and explore. I think the biggest thing when you're 13 is you just don't know what you don't know. I had it happen to me. I thought I wanted to be a vet because that's what people who love animals do. I had no idea that there were bioacoustic researchers and animal nutritionists and genetic researchers. I mean, there's just so many different STEM careers. So my mission is to show kids how broad and vast they are in a fun and user friendly way. So I have almost 200 different STEM careers in the system, and each one has a virtual job shadow video. One of my pet peeves as a teacher was that there's a lot of information and there's a lot of people talking about their jobs, but when you're 13, you still don't know what an electrical engineer does until you've seen them do it. So I tried really hard to find videos that show people doing their job that are all under 5 minutes. Then I have an info sheet in English and Spanish. A lot of my customers are in Texas, so having those dual language resources has been really important. And then each career page also includes a try it, which is like a fun career focused test drive where kids get to see and do what that real STEM professional does. So for example, one of the new career pages I just posted was Galactic Greenhouse Farmer, where students have to figure out what types of plants could grow on Mars and then design some type of greenhouse to house the Martian garden. So just something fun, cool, interesting. I add a new career every week to keep kids engaged, but also, and equally importantly, make it effortless for adults, teachers to do with students. I found as a teacher, you just don't have time. There's only so many hours in a day. And I know career exploration is sometimes seen as something extra that you just don't have time for. So in everything that I've created, I've tried really hard to make a next step and not have to depend on an adult to help them take that next step.
Yeah. I know students very often, they'll be sitting in class and they go, well, when am I ever going to use this? So
yeah, so that's actually how all this started. When I started teaching, I was only 22, and I was teaching in the north end of Hartford, and that's what they would ask me all the time, Miss, why do I need to know this? And I didn't have a good answer for a couple years, and it bothered me because, I mean, of course, I think atoms are cool, but I have to realize that not every teenager thinks that the nucleus is the coolest thing. So that was why I created all this, because I found STEM careers to be that answer of why do I need to know this. So yes, my goal wasn't to necessarily make every kid love science or want to be a scientist, but at least at the end of the lesson, I was able to say, this is what a real mechanical engineer does. So if you're interested in that, perfect. If not, perfect. Now you know something you don't want to do. But yeah, long story short, that's why I did all of this, because it answered to me that why do I need to know this question?
So give our listeners a little example. Tell us what some of the most common STEM jobs are, and tell us one or two that seem to be out of left field that most people don't think about.
Yeah, so the careers that most kids default towards are doctor, nurse, vet, lawyer, teacher. They're careers that they're familiar with. They're careers that they've experienced in their own life. But that's just the very, very tip of the iceberg, and that's my mission in that awareness piece, like I mentioned earlier, is you have no idea how broad things are. Things like AR and VR developer, 3D modeler, galactic greenhouse farmer, like I said, a rover driver for the mission to Mars. There's so many careers, especially maybe you've heard the statistic. I can't remember exactly the source, but it's something like 70% of jobs in the next 10 years don't even exist yet. So we need to prepare kids to enter careers that don't exist. And how do you do that? Is by instilling in them how broad STEM is and instilling in them STEM as a mindset rather than STEM as specific disciplines of science, technology, engineering, math. It's a way of problem solving, a way of figuring things out for yourself. And that's how you get kids to prepare for jobs that don't exist.
Yeah, that's fantastic because the industries are changing so quickly. Um, I've often said, people talk about fintech and insurtech, and the fact of the matter is, those aren't real industries. All finance jobs now have a technology aspect to it. All insurance jobs, in fact, most jobs in general have a tech aspect to it. And coding is now becoming the blue collar work of these upcoming generations. There was a news article just the other day. Both Arby's and McDonald's are testing tech services that will serve as the drive-through. There will no longer be a person taking your order in the drive-through. Somebody has to program those. When they go down, somebody has to fix them. And that's all technology.
Definitely. Yeah, and that's one of my missions as well, is I believe every career is a STEM career now, but especially as the world evolves and technology accelerates things at such a fast pace. For example, my husband is a tile setter, And the amount of geometry and math behind that is mind blowing. I'd be completely lost. So I've defined every career as a STEM career. So some of the others I include on my website are fashion designer, welder, upholsterer. Every career to me is a STEM career because, again, STEM is a mindset. It's a way of thinking. And again, technology, coming back to that, is so critical to everything in our lives now and is only going to be more so as the future arrives.
I love that it's a way of thinking because a
Yeah.
number of years ago, my company sponsored a competition at Yale for non business graduate students to go into business consulting. And the competition was they were given a problem in a company and they had to figure out a solution. And as a business coach and consultant, I would rather somebody have an engineering or a science background to do what I do than have an MBA because
Mm.
STEM is how things work. When you boil it down to its simplest form, it's how things work. And that is a crucial part of basically every career now.
Most definitely, yeah. Especially as we all carry the sum of human knowledge in our pockets, our cell phones. Knowledge for knowledge's sake is ubiquitous and useless, honestly, if I can Google it. I don't need to learn about it in school, but what we do need is to learn how to think and apply what we know and can figure out into a real life situation to solve a problem, to find our own answers, to ask our own questions, to figure out how to answer them, to make stuff, to do stuff, to learn stuff. To me, that's what STEM is like, yeah, like I said, a mindset, a way of interpreting and processing. And it's so important to have STEM as a mindset and STEM skills, regardless of your career, because the world is always changing.
Yeah, that's the way. I mean, STEM, in so many words, it just makes things interesting. It's the way to do it. Basically, you said it's just a way of looking at things and going out and actually doing things rather than just sitting there looking at a textbook and so on. And I mean, what you've done with your approach, showing people how to do it, explaining it, and so on, so that they can very quickly look at different scenarios there. Obviously, that gets them thinking even more about a whole lot of other things. And as you're saying, you're adding a new profession every week, and most of them on there people don't even know about. So it's just so
Yeah.
neat.
Yeah, thanks. And to me, that try it piece is so, so important. And I guess it comes back to my own personal experience. I didn't realize that vets spend half of their days putting animals down. So, had I gotten more hands on experience at a young age, so I have career exploration resources starting in pre K. I have a pre K STEM career exploration curriculum, and it's one of my best sellers. But I do have resources for all the grades. But that I think that just underscores my philosophy of everything you're doing is STEM and everything you're doing is also a career exploration activity. I teach college courses as well. And one of the things I always tell my students is if you figure out in doing something what you like about it, that's a career exploration activity. If you figure out in this part of this class, I was completely bored, that's career exploration. So everything that you're doing, you're gathering data, you're synthesizing, you're parsing out what you like and what you don't like. But that's not something that you're born with. That's not an outlook on life that comes naturally. It's something that's very easy to adopt, but you just need that one person to say, hey, everything you do is a STEM career exploration activity and leading your life from there.
Yeah. We had a guest a few weeks ago, also talking about STEM. And one of the big difficulties that she had in dealing with educators is that our public school systems are not teaching kids to think along STEM lines. They're just teaching them to memorize facts for their tests.
Right.
How can we get past this?
We can get past that by adopting STEM as a mindset. So I teach education classes. I teach teachers how to teach science. And I think it goes back to we mimic what we've seen. So a lot of teachers in schools, they're still following that traditional sage on the stage model. I think us as adults, and this is what I teach my students who are about to be teachers or are practicing teachers, is you have to give up control. I think that's the biggest thing holding back American education, is that the adults are holding fast to control. And STEM is risky. STEM is seen as an unknown, and that's what it is. That defines it. It's an unknown, and you figure it out. And that terrifies some adults because they themselves don't know the answer. I know many a time I was teaching a science lesson and I had no idea what the answer was, but I was fine with that. And by the end of the class, we all figured it out. So giving up control is what's holding us back. That's what we need to get around if we really want to inspire and develop the next generation of STEM leaders and innovators.
Yeah, and going back to what we were saying about every career having a STEM basis, we saw over the last year and a half how teachers needed to be able to adapt using technology and use their STEM skills just to get classes done. So you never know where these skills are going to come in handy.
That's right. And that's, again, why STEM is such a mindset. You always have to be flexible. You always have to be thinking. You have to try it. If it doesn't work, figure out what worked and fix it. Yes, it's so important.
So if you were to walk into a classroom, specifically a classroom of teachers, you just said you teach these classes, what's the one thing that you want to make sure teachers take away that they can bring to their classes?
I would say, I've said it a few times, I think I'll just keep with it, is STEM as a mindset. And that STEM is not something different or extra that has to get in the way of what you already have to cover. STEM is a way of thinking. And if you yourself adopt STEM as a way of thinking, I mean, if you really want the details, what I use in my classes is called the 5E model for teaching and learning. The 5 E's are engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate. Engage and explore is when you're getting kids interested, you're trying to follow up on what they want to learn about, you're asking questions, you're doing demonstrations, you're piquing their interest. I think so many times we start with the explain. We just tell all the answers, and then the rest is just reaffirming that what the teacher said is correct. I think what I really would love to see teachers do is turn the lesson on its head, where the answers are unknown, but by the end of the lesson, they have figured it out using STEM as a mindset. And less emphasis on facts, less emphasis on doing it right. A lot of times, like, the word in education is called a cookbook lab. Like, even in science, you're following directions and arriving at a prescribed outcome and figuring this out. Even to me, that's not really STEM as a mindset, because you're telling them the answer. To me, what I really would love to see educators do, what my mission to them would be, is be okay with saying, I don't know, and practice yourself figuring it out along with your students. And that is really where you'll see the engagement increase, you'll see the interest increase. And we've been fighting this here in America for decades. Students have been unengaged, test scores in achievement in science have flatlined, and it's because we keep doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome.
Which Albert Einstein defined as the definition of insanity.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this has been going on for quite a long time, and I was actually reminded of how long it's been going on, because the other day I was watching an old episode of The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and Johnny Carson was discussing the fact that the president, and I don't know when this episode was, so I don't know which president he was referring to, but he said the president had just announced that they were going to have an initiative to have American schools be number one by the year 2000. And clearly it still hasn't happened.
No, it hasn't. Still waiting on that.
Yeah, I don't remember when that came out, and I'm probably old enough that the president that announced I was still around. But it's I love the perspective on this, because, you know, being a new grandpa, obviously I'm looking at my granddaughter grow up. She'll be 22 months old on Saturday, and there's nothing like watching children, because life hasn't happened to them yet. And, you talk about engaging and exploring and so on and so forth. That is a definition of a child. And we never lose that. But what happens is when things change as far as education and you have to learn and memorize and so on and so forth, all of a sudden the engaging and the exploring go out of that. And basically what the priority is you've got to learn this stuff and memorize it, take a test and score well. And what good is that doing for you personally? All it is an accomplishment. So, I mean, the whole system is flipped. And that's why, the teachers who have been around for a long, long time and so on and learn things this way and are just stuck in their ways are really shoving against us so much, because it's just, it's not the way that they're brought up. But reality is exactly what you're talking about. And it's getting back to the simple basics of what we are as human beings, engaging, exploring. And the bottom line is, if you're going to have fun doing things, you're going to want to do it more. I mean, we talk about networking and everybody's wearing a sign saying, "What's in it for me?" And if it's what's in it for me, I'm going to get 100 on a test. Sorry, that doesn't float my boat.
Right. Yeah. No, you're definitely right. And it, like I said, it starts young. And I do it with my own kids. So my daughter is 6, my son is 8. And everything that they do, I also try to support in that engage and that explore phase, and also connecting to careers. So for example, my daughter, she really likes to play with blocks and magnetiles. So one day she built a little tower and I was like, "Oh, Mila, that's a really cool civil engineering project you got going on there." So of course, obviously the first time I said that, she was like, "What's civil engineering?" I was like, "Oh, well, they're just people who build stuff, which is what you like to do." So she was like, "Oh, cool." So, and that was it. I mean, I didn't like get out a PowerPoint and show her all these things about civil engineering. It was just that very, very simple act of connecting something I saw her be interested in to a career. And then if I keep seeing that over and over, maybe we'll do a after school program for engineering, or, like something where I can keep supporting her interests. But to me, it starts not even just at the teacher level, at the parent level as well, as naming and helping your kids see that, oh, I can have a future and I can make money doing something I love. Sometimes kids just need help connecting the dots of what they do and what they love and how it relates to their future.
Yeah, and I think, what you mentioned earlier about explore, that is so important, because when a student is given something and it's like, yes, this is what an atom is. It's got, electrons, neutrons, protons. They're sort of like, okay, fine. But when you spread that out and you show them some of the really fantastic things, like talking about, say, quantum physics,
right?
You don't have to explain the whole thing to them. Just give them the idea that all these things are possible, and that triggers in them that idea that, whoa, I gotta find out about this. Is this real? It's And the fact of the matter is, science is not as straightforward as a high school science class, or certainly when science is talked about in the media, leads people to believe.
No, most definitely not. And that's the beauty and the fun of it, that schools out of you. It's fun. It's always changing. It's always being revised. It's not always right or wrong answer. And yeah, I think a lot of education kills that for kids, kills their creativity, kills that exploration piece, because it's the emphasis on the right answer. But I do believe that that's changing, and I'm encouraged from what I'm seeing lately. Especially, I was discouraged with the onset of distance learning, because I felt that we were taking the most broken aspects of education and just putting it on steroids. But I am starting to see a shift now of more personalized learning, more inquiry-based learning, because Google or any other learning platforms is just a click away. So you don't need to be on the Zoom call with me for 30 minutes when you can just watch a video about it. But you can learn that and now go do something cool that matters to you to apply it. To me, that's the power of distance learning, and I'm encouraged because I am starting to see more of that happening.
Absolutely. And, part of it is also presentation. When a teacher is just standing in front of a classroom and reciting facts, it doesn't engage the class. And, we've talked about this on a lot of podcasts, how important it is to engage your audience. It works not just in business or making a presentation, but it's basic education. I mean, honestly, both of my kids were very interested in science, and it didn't come from the school. It came from watching Beekman's World, Bill Nye the Science Guy, and Mythbusters.
Yep, me too. Yep. Yeah, and I think that's where parents, like I said earlier, come in really, really strong. Like, you don't realize the power that you have as a parent to shape your kid's future, because a lot of times they are bored in school. They are looking for other opportunities. And it doesn't have to be, oh, I got to go find this thing for my kid to do. It can be very simple of, well, what do you think about that? Or just asking them questions, engaging them in a conversation, helping them figure out how to explore on their own. It's not that we as parents have to be teachers and replicate that system. It's we as parents can help our students navigate through their own system and figure out their own answers to their own questions.
And it's tying in their interests. My youngest son, when he was, I guess, 6, 7 years old, somewhere around there, he wanted to be Tony Stark. Well, now he pulls apart computers, he overclocks processors, he rebuilds and hacks them, and he learned all about the circuits, and because he was able to take that interest, which obviously has no bearing in real life, but he got to start to look at what that meant and how he could actually use skills like that.
Right. Yeah, and that's why I argue that the earlier you start all that, the better. Imagine if every elementary school student was already figuring out what their interests are, and we're already honing in and developing their talents. I think as an entrepreneur and as a teacher, both, talent is so, so, so precious. And that's only going to become more so as we're experiencing massive retirements, labor shortages, all that is you're going to be, if you're good at something, you're going to be wealthy. There's really no reason not to right now. So if you're good at something and you can get good at something from a young age, you can make a lot of money and be very happy. I mean, obviously life is about so many things, but money and happiness, it's very attainable if you focus in on a talent and develop that talent from a young age.
Yeah, and it's so neat now, obviously going through other generations that I've been going through. Looking at parents now, especially looking at my son and daughter-in-law, working with my granddaughter, educators, I mean, your website talks to students, talks to educators. Your parents are your educators until you go to school. And the more parents know about this and become more engaged, I mean, you should do like a course just for parents on parenting with this. And they would be so interested in this too, because kids by default are just getting into this. And by getting to the parents that go to the teachers who are set in their ways and so on and so forth, that could really accelerate the change in the whole system just by the demand. And I see that happening because, again, I mean, I am so much into the younger generation, your age, looking at the kids growing up. Obviously, we still have a whole bunch of social issues and hangups and so on and so forth. But socially, the world is a much, much better place than it was when my grandparents grew up, when my parents grew up, when I grew up, when my kids grew up. And that the children these days, they're just kids and they're all one. And that's something that we can really, really build on. And it all starts with, just as you're saying, engaging and exploring together. And it starts with the parents. So the more that they're into this, and they probably realize that when they're bringing their kids up, this is exactly what they're doing without saying I'm using Ashley's STEM careers in STEM to do it. That's how they start. That's how kids start learning. By doing it. Just like
you're
saying,
right.
Try it,
Yes, try it. It's so important.
All right. Well, we're just about at the end of our time. So if our listeners want to get more information about your services and what you do, how can they find out more?
Yep. My website is careerinstem.com, and you can find anything you want to know. Email me, call me. I'm always happy to chat because at the end of the day, if I can help a teacher or a parent, I can help more kids be informed and productive citizens. And to me, that's what it is all about at the end of the day.
Fantastic. Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for today?
Now, I've loved this whole podcast, the theme, but basically just clear your head, drop everything, and go out, engage, explore, find something, try it, do it. That's what it's all about. Life is too complicated. This is just simplicity.
Yep. Love it.
Yeah, I love that. I think for me, the big takeaway is the idea of a STEM mindset. And if we could spread the word on that, get people to understand that, yeah, STEM isn't this overwhelming set of data. It's a mindset that you can do almost anything you want with. So I think that's the big takeaway for me. And I love that idea. Thank you so much for bringing it to us.
You're welcome. It's my life's work. So there it is in a nutshell.
You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts. You can also find us on the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.